The aroma of sizzling ribs and slow-smoked brisket wafted through the neighborhood, a tantalizing hint of the good times to come, wrapped in the deep, smoky scent of hickory. Laughter echoed as kids darted around with sticky hands, and the soulful tunes of an old-school Arvabi playlist set the mood. It was the epitome of a perfect Saturday afternoon, until she arrived. Linda stood at the edge of her yard, arms crossed so tightly it seemed she might snap in two, her lips pursed into a thin, judgmental line. Her eyes zeroed in on the plumes of smoke curling up from my grill as if they'd insulted her personally. This wasn't her first rodeo. She'd griped about my mailbox being an inch too tall, complained my Christmas decorations were too cheerful, and now, she'd locked onto her ultimate nemesis, the barbecue. She didn't speak at first, just simmered there, taking exaggerated breaths like my expertly seasoned meat was some kind of toxic assault on her lungs. Then, with the flair of a daytime drama antagonist, she yanked out her phone and started dialing. I let out a sigh. She's actually doing it. My buddy Marcus, already digging into his second plate of food, wiped his mouth and chuckled. Nah, man, she's bluffing. Linda spun around, locked eyes with me, and spoke into the phone loud enough for the whole block to hear. Yes, I'd like to report an illegal gathering. There's excessive smoke, loud noise, and potentially dangerous conditions. It's completely disruptive. She paused, nodding as if the operator could see her, then added, It smells like chemicals. Marcus let out a low whistle. Oh, she's all in. I waved at her. Linda, you're calling the cops over barbecue smoke? On a Saturday? In America? She turned away, muttering into her phone with that sanctimonious tone that made HOA meetings pure torture. The party hushed for a moment, folks swapping glances, unsure whether to keep eating or bolt like we were about to be raided. I rolled my eyes. All right, everyone, place your bets. 5 minutes till the cops show up. Laughter rippled through the crowd, though a thread of tension lingered. This was her third stunt in a year, and while I usually brushed it off, today felt heavier. This wasn't just about a cookout, it was a power play. She wanted to dominate. 10 minutes later, sirens wailed. 2 patrol cars rolled up, lights flashing, but sirens off, thank goodness. A few guests fidgeted nervously, but I wasn't fazed. I strolled over to meet the officers before Linda could pounce, flashing my best host grin. The older cop, a tired-looking guy named Ed whose face screamed, I'm over this, stepped forward. We got a call about a disturbance. He sniffed the air. I gestured behind me. Yep, a real dangerous one, best brisket this side of town. Want a plate? The younger officer, barely hiding a smirk, nudged his partner. Told you it was a barbecue call. Linda stormed over before I could savor the moment. Excuse me, officer, this man is creating a public nuisance. That smoke is toxic, my allergies are flaring, and the noise. This is a residential area, not a frat party. Ed shot her a look I'd only seen dads give kids begging for dessert before dinner. Ma'am, we're here for a disturbance, not to judge a cookout. Linda gasped like she'd been slapped. So you're just going to let him do whatever he wants? Ed sighed. Unless he's breaking a noise ordinance, starting an actual fire, or disturbing the peace, there's not much to do. Grill looks safe to me. I clapped my hands. Well, that's that. Officers, grab a plate. Make the trip worthwhile. The younger cop raised an eyebrow. For real. Best ribs around, guaranteed. Ed hesitated, then shrugged. I'm off in 20 minutes anyway. Linda's face contorted into something like a melted Halloween mask. You're seriously going to eat his food after I called you to enforce the law? The younger cop grinned. No law against good barbecue, ma'am. She let out a literal screech, spun around, and stomped back to her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I handed the officers plates, and soon they were parked at a picnic table, blending in with the crowd. Marcus leaned over. Bro, you turned a police call into a catering gig. I smirked. Adapt and overcome. The party roared back to life, the music cranking up, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I'd finally bested Linda. Then I caught her peeking through her blinds. This wasn't over. She didn't lose without plotting a full-on war. The next morning, I woke to rustling on my porch. I figured it was a breeze or a stray cat, but when I opened the door, a stack of papers was taped there. My gut dropped before I even read them. Notice of violation blared at the top, followed by the dreaded HOA. I groaned, peeling them off. Of course Linda hadn't let it go. She'd probably stayed up all night typing this garbage. I flipped through: smoke violations, noise complaints, unauthorized social gathering. Apparently, I was running an illicit operation in my own backyard. Marcus, still in last night's sauce-stained shirt, shuffled out of the guest room, yawning. "What's that?" I tossed the papers on the counter. "Linda's revenge. She's sicked the HOA on me." He squinted at the top sheet. "Man, how does she type so fast? This is like a lawsuit." It wasn't a lawsuit yet, but it was close. I had a formal violation hearing in a week. Lose, and I'd face fines or a ban on large-scale events. My barbecue kingdom was under siege. Worse, Linda had canvassed the neighborhood, collecting signatures. Some were from her usual allies, folks who'd never liked me, but a few names stung. People who'd eaten my ribs, laughed at my jokes. Betrayal, courtesy of backyard politics. Marcus whistled. "So what's the plan? Give up or fight?" I grinned, sipping coffee. "Oh, we're fighting. The smart way. Step 1, intel." I'd never bothered with the full HOA handbook, and I bet Linda hadn't either. She just cherry-picked rules to wield like weapons. I spent hours poring over every regulation, loophole, and vague clause. Then I struck gold. My barbecue was a private event, but nothing banned public ones, especially community-based gatherings that improved the neighborhood. An idea sparked. If Linda wanted to play dirty, I'd play brilliant. By day's end, I'd printed flyers, not summons, but invitations. The first annual neighborhood barbecue festival. Food, games, music, open to all. Bonus? I'd called the local PD, who were thrilled to supervise. Marcus peeked over my shoulder as I stapled a flyer to the community board. "You're really doing this?" I grinned. "Oh, I'm doing this." Linda spotted the flyer by noon. I knew because I saw her staring at it, lips twitching with barely contained fury. I thought she'd rip it down, but she just stormed off. A storm was brewing. That night, my doorbell rang. I braced for another nasty note or a showdown. But there stood Linda, smirking, a stack of papers in hand. "Cute stunt," she said, her sweetness laced with venom. I crossed my arms. "Thanks, I try." She stepped closer, voice low. "Think you can turn the neighborhood against me?" I laughed. "Linda, you've done that yourself." Her smirk vanished. "You're making a mistake." I took her papers, another HOA complaint, this time a petition to restrict gatherings to board-approved events. If she got enough signatures, she could rewrite the rules. I sighed. "Ever just, I dunno, watch a movie? Do normal stuff?" Her eyes narrowed. "I'm going to win." I leaned on the doorframe. "We'll see." The next few days were a signature war. Linda pounded doors for her petition. I did the same for mine. It felt like a campaign, but the stakes were my grilling rights. Then the sabotage started. My grill vanished from the backyard, found it on the curb with a note: "Fire hazard." Festival posters disappeared overnight from bulletin boards and shops. No one saw anything, but I had my guesses. Then the gut punch: Mr. Davis, 3 houses down, a barbecue regular who always brought beer and grilling tips, bailed. When I asked why, he wouldn't look at me. "Look, Mike, I just think we should keep the peace." "Peace?" I repeated. "You love my barbecue." He winced. "I know, but Linda's talking city involvement, health inspections, fines. I can't risk it." I stared. "So that's it." He nodded, ashamed. "Sorry, man." I walked away, fuming. That night, staring at the empty spot where my grill once stood, Marcus plopped down beside me. "What now?" "She's pulling every trick." I tapped my chair. "Now we go bigger." He raised an eyebrow. "Bigger than a festival?" I smiled. "Way bigger." Linda thought this was just about barbecue, a petty spat. She didn't realize she'd lit a fire in me. I wasn't just winning. I'd make sure she remembered it. Festival morning dawned, the air thick with smoked meat and unspoken tension. The park was perfection. Checkered tables, vendors citywide, a stage with bands tuning up, balloons and banners everywhere. Ribs, brisket, and burgers scented the breeze, laughter blending with chatter. It should have been flawless, but Linda's silence the past 24 hours gnawed at me. Too quiet. She didn't quit without a scheme. Marcus nudged me as I checked the grill. "I don't trust it, man. Feels like the villain's lurking." I nodded, scanning the crowd. "She's got something. We just don't know what." The event kicked off strong. People poured in, plates heaped high. Even some of Linda's initial supporters showed up, drawn by the food despite their promises. Local news covered it as a feel-good story. I gave an interview about unity, not division, but kept glancing over my shoulder. Linda was MIA. Then, just as I dared to hope she'd surrendered, fire trucks rolled in. 3 of them, lights flashing, sirens off. A fire marshal stepped out, clipboard in hand, eyeing the scene. The crowd murmured, music faded, excitement turning to confusion. Then Linda emerged from behind them, smug, clutching a paper like a trophy. "Mike," she called, voice syrupy with fake concern. "Looks like you've got a problem." The marshal approached. "Sir, we got complaints about an unauthorized open flame event. Need to inspect." I clenched my jaw. "You kidding?" Linda folded her arms, eyes glinting. "Fire safety matters, Mike. Wouldn't want anyone hurt." The marshal's team checked the grills. I knew we were legit, extinguishers ready, spacing perfect, but that wouldn't stop them from nitpicking. Marcus whispered. "She called the fire department on a barbecue festival. She's a supervillain." I exhaled, staying calm. "Yeah, but I've got to play too." Linda watched, arms crossed, as the inspectors roamed. I walked up, voice low. "You're really ruining this for everyone?" She tilted her head, smiling. "It's not personal, Mike. Just rules." I chuckled. "You should have let it go. Now you've given me an excuse to go bigger next year." Her smile flickered, but she recovered. "There won't be a next year." The marshal returned, glancing between us. "Everything's up to code. No violations. We're done." Linda's jaw tightened. "You sure? Fuel sources? Spacing?" He cut her off. "Ma'am, it's fine. Legal event." Her face turned a new shade of red. The fire crew left, and the festival revived, until I saw Linda near an unattended grill. The chef was distracted, and she glanced around, then twisted the propane valve. A hiss escaped before she pulled back, feigning innocence. I bolted over, shouting, "Hey!" and tightened it just in time. The crowd went silent, all eyes on her. A camera flashed. A reporter lowered their phone, stunned. "Did you just—" Marcus shook his head. "Yo, you sabotaged a festival in front of everyone." Linda stammered, "Oh, I didn't, but it was too late." The cops who'd been chilling at the event stepped in. "Ma'am, let's talk," one said, leading her away. The crowd buzzed, some laughed, others gawked. HOA board members flipped sides fast. Linda's complaint evaporated, along with her credibility. By sunset, she was a local punchline, thanks to the news. A for sale sign sprouted in her yard that night. Victory never tasted so sweet. As I flipped the last ribs, Marcus clapped my back. "Man, you turned a barbecue into a revolution." I laughed. "Next year's gonna be epic."